Most people have heard of a prenuptial agreement or a prenup, but not everyone is as familiar with a postnuptial agreement or a postnup. So what is a postnup? Well, it's close to what a prenup is. It's an agreement that you and your spouse come to about how financials would work in the event of a divorce. But instead of it happening before you get married, it actually happens while you're married. So if you miss the opportunity to do a prenuptial agreement, you might call an experienced divorce lawyer to find out what's a postnuptial agreement and is it an option for you? Is it something that if you did it, a court would recognize that agreement down the line should you choose to divorce? When we meet with clients who are considering doing a postnuptial agreement, one of the first things that we do is have an intense conversation about what their goals are. For some people, their goals align very nicely with a postnuptial agreement. For other people, it's probably not the best mechanism for them to accomplish their goals. If after our deep dive, we've decided that a postnup would fit nicely with your goals, the next thing we're going to do is talk to you about whether or not you've talked to your spouse about the postnup. Because in order to enter into a postnup, both spouses need to be on board. You can't unilaterally do a postnup. It has to be an agreement between the two of you. So you'll usually have that conversation. I've found in marriages, it doesn't work very well for your spouse to be asked this question by your lawyer. You need to talk about it, the two of you. And assuming that your spouse is open to the idea of a postnup, we'd help you get some names to your spouse of attorneys that they might work with. We'd want both of you to work with attorneys to make sure that you both have the advice you need so that down the line, if a court is considering whether or not your postnup is valid because you've chosen to end your marriage, we want to make sure that both of you had the opportunity to consult with your own lawyer. Then we start drafting the postnup. What are the things that you want in it? How do you want things to work? Are you expecting something like an inheritance? Do you have opinions about how alimony should work or property division should you divorce down the line? So those are the kinds of discussions we have so that we can put together a first draft of the agreement. Then we review the agreement with you, of course, because you're our client. And then we start to share it with the other side and have some negotiations back and forth, make sure it lines up with what everyone discussed and make sure that both of you are comfortable with it. Then that postnup gets signed and basically gets put in a drawer and only brought out again if you need it in the future. The only sort of different way that might go is sometimes there are things that people want to change in the postnup because circumstances have changed in the future. So it's possible in most cases to revisit that postnup and make some amendments. There's a state statute in Connecticut that gives some really pretty clear rules about what you need to do in order to make sure that you have an enforceable prenup. But when it comes to a postnup, we don't have a statute that lays out clearly what you need to do to make sure that a court will enforce it down the line should you choose to end your marriage. So what lawyers do is they read case law on postnups to give us a better sense of what the things are we want to make sure happened or are included in your postnup in order to set up your postnup for the most likely chance of a court enforcing it. Again, this isn't as clear as a prenup. There are things that you have to be more mindful of. With a postnuptial agreement, I really want to make sure that you both retain a lawyer because this is a nuanced area of the law that's not as black and white as some of the work we do. So hire a lawyer for your postnup because it's not worth doing it if it's not going to be enforced.